Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
في الشأن الفلسطيني شن الطيران الحربي الإسرائيلي غارة جديدة على مواقع مختلفة.
On the Palestinian issue, Israel warplanes carried out new air raids on various sites in the northern and southern Gaza Strip. The first attack targeted 3 bridges in Beit Hunin in the north of the Strip. The Israeli Defense Minister, Shaul Mofaz, said that his forces will continue striking Gaza and that Hamas's announcement to stop attacking Israel is not enough. Thousands of students from the Dar al-Arqam school demonstrated in front of the International Red Cross headquarters in Gaza, protesting the attack of their school by Israeli missiles and demanding a guarantee to their right of an education. Meanwhile, dozens of Palestinians protested in Gaza City, condemning Israeli threats not to guarantee the protection of journalists. Has the pen turned into a missile? Has the school bag turned into an explosive device? The questions were written on banners that children and students from the Dar al-Arqam school raised during their demonstration in front of the International Red Cross headquarters in Gaza. They condemned the Israeli air raid that targeted their school several years ago, transforming it into a pile of rubble. Israel justified this by claiming that it was a Hamas institution. Because education is a right guaranteed by international and state laws, the children sent a letter to the United Nations representative demanding that the organization stand with them in guaranteeing their right to education and denouncing the Israeli government's policy of denying education to Palestinians.
We came today to express our rejection of this raid that targeted our school, which is an educational institution and not a terrorist institution. This institution takes care of the orphans, the sons of the martyrs and the imprisoned, who have nothing to do with terrorism.
In the same manner, and facing Israeli threats of targeting media institutions, journalists organized a protest in Gaza City with the participation of a number of journalists and local human rights organizations. They expressed their rejection of these threats, confirming that reporters' offices are not military targets. They demanded that the international community carry out its responsibility to protect Palestinian journalists.
The issue is deeper than just threats. Everyone is talking about how the occupation forces say that they are not responsible for the protection of the Palestinian journalists, who will be targets if they are in places near the raid operation areas. I believe that all of Gaza is a target for raids. Thus, we are not safe, and our offices are not safe. We have all become targets.
The continued Israeli military operations do not only target Hamas and the Islamic Jihad activities, but they have started targeting civic institutions like schools, homes, and business, leading Palestinians to fear further violations of their freedom of press, which works to convey the truth and uncover the deception of Israeli claims. Earlier, Israeli warplanes had targeted Palestinian civilian targets. In the northern Gaza Strip, they bombed a bridge that links Beit Hanun to the rest of the Strip, claiming that armed Palestinians used the bridge to launch missiles at Israeli targets. Meanwhile, in the city of Khan Yunis, a raid targeted an office belonging to the Fatah movement and a bank, claiming that they are both being used to finance the Hamas movement. The raid caused major damage to both properties.
In today's top story, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon is meeting with members of his cabinet in the wake of last night's decision by the Likud Central Committee not to bring forward the party primaries. Benjamin Netanyahu says that as a Democrat, he accepts the committee's surprise decision. At the same time, Netanyahu went on the offensive, calling Prime Minister Sharon a political dictator. IBA's Leah Zinda reports on the continuing drama in Israel's ruling party.
All of the polls predicted a Netanyahu victory in the Central Committee ballot, so the result, announced by Committee Chairman Tzachi Hanegbi shortly after midnight, was doubly painful for Benjamin Netanyahu and his supporters, and doubly sweet for Sharon and those who stood by him. The percentage of voting was unprecedented in the Likud and perhaps in the country as a whole. Over 91% of the 3,000-odd committee members cast their vote. The Prime Minister heard the news at his Negev ranch, but his supporters in Tel Aviv broke out bottles of champagne and chanted, "Arik, King of Israel." They also demanded that Netanyahu honor the committee decision and disband the Likud rebel camp. Netanyahu himself valiantly showed up at the convention center to concede defeat. However, in a brief statement, the former finance minister made it clear the game was far from over. There is still a large camp within the Likud fighting for its beliefs, he said, and it will continue to do so. Later, Netanyahu charged that Central Committee voters had caved in to pressure and offers of favors and jobs from the Prime Minister, whom he dubbed a political dictator. But Netanyahu may find his supporters in the Likud Knesset faction dwindling. Several of them have already said today that it's time to put dissension aside and become a united Likud once again. Education Minister Limor Livnat, who switched to the Netanyahu camp at the very last minute, today denied that she had ever left the Sharon camp. On the other hand, Foreign Minister Silvan Shalom, who fought hard for Prime Minister Sharon, was quick to claim credit for the victory. Shalom and Ehud Olmert both received phone calls of thanks and appreciation for their efforts from the Prime Minister. Some of Sharon's associates are calling for punitive action, possibly firings, against those cabinet ministers who joined the Netanyahu camp. But it's more likely that the Prime Minister will take advantage of his victory to gain quick Knesset approval for Ehud Olmert as permanent finance minister and to pass the state budget. Netanyahu is expected to keep a low profile and prepare for the primaries in 6 months' time, when he will take on Sharon once again. Leah Zinder for IBA News.
Israeli military action continued today in the Gaza Strip. Air Force helicopters fired missiles at a series of terrorist targets, causing damage but no injuries. The Army says it attacked access routes used by the Islamic terrorists to fire Qassam rockets into Israel. One missile reportedly destroyed a bridge near the town of Beit Hanun. Also targeted was a money-changing store at Khan Yunis. The Army says the store was used as a front to funnel money to Hamas from the United Arab Emirates.
Well, Palestinians may be celebrating a small Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories, but many suffer daily under Israeli occupation. Not least are those in full-time education. The Rosary Sisters School, located in Beit Hanina and in Al-Dahia at the edge of Ramallah, has been divided because of Israel's checkpoints and its illegal wall. Here's its story. Until recently, the Rosary Sisters School had one building located in Beit Hanina, an Arab neighborhood on the outskirts of Jerusalem. Residents there carry blue Israeli identification cards. They distinguish them as residents of Jerusalem and allow them to move more freely between Palestinian and Israeli-controlled areas. Those in Al-Dahia generally have green ID cards. These mark them as Palestinian residents of the West Bank and restrict them from entering Israeli-controlled areas without special permission. After the Palestinian Intifada, or uprising, broke out in 2000, Israel set up numerous checkpoints leading from the West Bank to Jerusalem. As a result, many of the Rosary School pupils with green ID cards found it increasingly difficult to cross the checkpoints to get to school. Now, a new building has been established to accommodate some of the green ID students. Instead of going all the way to Beit Hanina, it's allowed them the same access to education, but with fewer Israeli checkpoints along the way.
We always pass the checkpoint and it is usually full, and sometimes we come by car. The hardest is during the winter because we have to wait here while the rain is falling. As one problem was solved, another developed. Now the students literally face a barrier to their schooling. The illegal Israeli wall will run between the two areas where the school is located.
The Beit Hanina building will become isolated on the Israeli side of the wall. The remaining portion of the school in Al-Dahiya will remain on the Palestinian side. The school's head foresees the illegal wall bringing many problems.
All the documents show that when the school was being built, there were no plans to build a wall. This land is for the monastery and this should be developed.
Sister Nakle is hoping the school will be able to stop the construction of the illegal wall through legal action. The wall is already causing grief to students. Since its construction began, many students have been forced to find alternative routes to school. Their journey to school has been getting longer and longer. Palestinians say no amount of Israeli checkpoints compensates from cutting off residents from their city, homes and schools. The wall is also designed to make it harder for Palestinians to reach East Jerusalem, which they seek as the capital of their future state.
I can say we suffered because of the checkpoint mainly, but at that point the wall wasn't there. We were suffering in the same way as other people living here. The problem is that we will want a joint effort between the teachers and the students for the school, especially the ones who are holding West Bank identification cards. Last year, the teachers had no permission for the whole year. The Israelis didn't issue any permits.
If the world allows Israel's illegal wall to be completed, at least 55,000 Palestinian residents of Jerusalem alone will continue to suffer. They and their children after them will be separated from a vast chunk of their lives and their livelihoods.
Iraqi and coalition forces have killed a leading Al-Qaeda leader in Iraq, dealing a blow to the militant group. But the scenario of suicide bombings continued to take lives. Iraqi and U.S. officials said the second-in-command of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Abdullah Najm al-Juwari, otherwise known as Abu Azzam, was killed during an early morning raid on Sunday. A U.S. commander said American and Iraqi forces tracked Abu Azzam, who is said to be the right-hand man of Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, to a high-rise Baghdad apartment building where he was shot. A spokesman for the Iraqi Prime Minister confirmed the killing. Meanwhile, a suicide bomber strapped with explosives mingled among a crowd of hundreds of police recruits in the center of Baquba, north of Baghdad, and blew himself up, killing at least 10 and wounding 28. West of Baghdad, gunmen fired on a convoy of Iraqi police vehicles, taking detainees to Abu Ghraib prison, killing 2 and wounding 12, among them police and detainees. In central Baghdad, a car bomb exploded, wounding 5 civilians. The car exploded outside a restaurant in Baghdad's busiest thoroughfare of Sa'din Street, targeting a convoy of foreign security company which was driving in the area. Police said the foreign convoy had escaped the attack, which set 2 civilian cars ablaze. In Kirkuk, a roadside bomb on a police patrol killed an Iraqi civilian and injured 2 policemen. Also in Kirkuk, insurgents assassinated police major Fakhr Jalal Amin. Elsewhere, Iraqi police said they found 22 bodies of shooting victims near the town of Quds, southeast of Baghdad. British Prime Minister Tony Blair said that Britain's place was firmly alongside America after the events of September 11 and that its troops would not retreat from Iraq. The Premier was speaking at the Labour Party's annual conference in Brighton, South England, in front of thousands of supporters. Blair conceded that several thousand insurgents were operating in Iraq, but said the only way to stop the innocent dying was to defend their right to decide their government. The success or failure of Iraqi parliamentary elections in December will help determine whether Blair can serve out his remaining time as Prime Minister without being dogged by the biggest decision he made in his role to help topple Saddam Hussein.
This is a global struggle. And today, it is at its fiercest in Iraq. It has allied itself there with every reactionary element in the Middle East. Their aim to wreck this December's first ever direct election for the government of Iran. Now, I know there are people, good people, who disagreed with the decision to remove Saddam by force. But for 2 years, British troops, whose bravery and dedication we salute, along with those of 27 other nations, have been in Iraq with full United Nations authority and in support of the Iraqi government. Yes, several hundred people stoned British troops in Basra. And yes, several thousand run the terrorist insurgency around Baghdad. And yes, as a result of the fighting, innocent people tragically die. But 8.5 million Iraqis showed which future they wanted when they came out and voted in January's elections.
The tense political and security situation in Iraq and the latest American war has spread the culture of violence to Iraqi children. Education experts are trying to create a new culture among children so that children's playgrounds do not turn into battlegrounds.
هكذا يلهو أطفال العراق.
This is how children play in Iraq. One kid tries to embody his mother, who died in a car bomb, and another child shoots towards an American soldier who shot at his mother and father, killing them both. The culture of violence has infiltrated children's playgrounds in this country. The culture of weapons in this country is not only due to the latest American war, according to experts in the society, but it is due to previous wars and the policies of the Saddam Hussein regime, which forced the military culture on Iraqis. Meanwhile, other experts consider that the presence of violence, bloodshed, and occupation vehicles in Iraqi streets strongly contributes to the violent practices in children's everyday play.
قد أسهمت بقوة في تعزيز الممارسات العنفية في ألعاب الأطفال.
صار عندنا بعدها يعني بفترة كلش هذا.
After this period of violence, the sale of toy guns became very popular. We sell toy guns both at retail and wholesale, but we sell a lot more in retail.
Amidst the anger of gunfire and sounds of explosions, the Iraqi children must find a pathway to school. They insist on continuing their lives despite what they are going through, which exceeds what many other nations have gone through. In school, education experts try to return innocence to the Iraqi children, although the terrorists in this country do not seem to discriminate between children and soldiers in their war.
Even Americans overreact. In some situations, when they see a child holding a toy gun or machine gun, they shoot the child and kill him because they're scared that they can get hit from anywhere.
To re-educate children of Iraq, one needs first to remove what was imprinted in their memories by the oppressive former regime, the occupation forces and the terrorists, so that children's playgrounds do not transform into battlegrounds in the future.
The military court in Fort Hood, Texas, found Lindy England guilty in 6 of 7 counts of mistreating Iraqi detainees in Abu Ghraib prison. The court decision coincided with the release of 500 Iraqi prisoners from Abu Ghraib prison as the holy month of Ramadan nears. Meanwhile, bloody attacks continued in Iraq, where a suicide bomber drove a booby-trapped car into a bus carrying some of the government employees outside the oil ministry, killing and injuring dozens of people.
نوع من الارتياح ساد الشارع العراقي ردا على إطلاق سراح 500 سجين.
Iraqis were somewhat relieved when they learned about the release of 500 Iraqi prisoners from the infamous Abu Ghraib prison, where many human rights violations were committed behind its walls at the hands of the American forces during the past 2 years. This comes as one step in the framework of an Iraqi-American plan to release 1,000 Iraqi prisoners as the holy month of Ramadan nears.
الذين يعتقد أن عددهم يتخطى 10.
The Special Iraqi Committee, which was formed to inspect files of 10,000 prisoners throughout the country, said that it will not recommend the release of anyone involved in committing dangerous crimes like attacking the coalition and Iraqi forces. Although the release of Iraqi prisoners is religiously justified, many make links between the timing of the release and the timing of the referendum on the Iraqi constitution, which is scheduled to take place on the 15th of October. The Iraqi government, backed by the American administration, is trying to convince the Iraqis to vote yes on the draft constitution, fearing that 2/3 of any 3 provinces may vote no, thus hindering efforts to improve the security situation. If the draft constitution fails in the referendum, then armed groups may use the opportunity to launch more attacks, like the one that took place outside the Iraqi oil ministry. A suicide bomber drove a booby-trapped car into a bus carrying the ministry's employees on board, killing and injuring dozens of people.
Unfortunately, innocent Iraqi citizens are targeted by terrorists. Innocent Iraqi citizens are not safe, but we hope that the Iraqi security forces will be able to control the security situation.
The former Iraqi Prime Minister Iyad Allawi, who is visiting the Jordanian capital of Amman, said that he is very worried about the recent security developments in Iraq. He predicted that the future will be worse if all Iraqi groups do not work together.
Truly, the security situation is getting terribly worse. The government must take serious steps to improve the situation in Iraq. There are a lot of options that the government can take. Iraqi political forces and parties, which we are a part of, must support the government.
These statements reflect the sentiments of many people in Iraq and abroad who fear that a civil war may erupt in the country where political participation is based on sectarianism and where some groups are being marginalized.
مساء الخير. سياسيا تراجع ملموس لحرارة السجالات بعد نجاح مروحة الاتصالات والمساعي في تبريد الأجواء، وهو ما قد يمهد الطريق.
Talks are back on track regarding the inquiry into the murder investigation of the former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik al-Hariri. As far as the investigation is concerned, the head of the International Investigation Team, Deltaf Milas, is reviewing the case thoroughly and studying the next steps that will be taken after meeting with high-ranking Syrian security officials. Milas is racing with time as he is trying to complete his report by the deadline of November 24th. The Lebanese Minister of Justice, Charles Rizq, disclosed that the Milas final report will not contain an indictment or a verdict, as it has been previously speculated. The report will only help the Lebanese authority in their investigational probe of al-Hariri's death. It will not recommend the transfer of this criminal case to an international court.
وهي إشارة واضحة على ما يبدو إلى أن الأمور قد لا تذهب إلى حد تحويل قضية الجريمة إلى محكمة دولية.
اللقاءات المكثفة والزيارات المتنقلة لرئيس فريق التحقيق الدولي ديتليف ميلس بين دمشق وبيروت قطعت شوطا.
Intensive talks and meetings between the head of the International Investigative Team, Detlef Melis, and Syrian and Lebanese officials are back on track and have been described as constructive. After meeting with senior Syrian security officials, Melis and his team are working out the details of their findings, evaluations, and recommendations. In the wake of his findings, Melis will decide on the next steps that will be taken. He is keeping the contents of his findings confidential. In a radio address, the Lebanese Minister of Justice, Charles Rizk, confirmed that the investigation committee will forward copies of their report and findings to the Lebanese Ministry of Justice and the United Nations on the 21st of November, which is 3 days prior to the due date of the Melis investigation report. Rizk confirmed that the report will contain a summary and recommendations of the findings which will assist the Lebanese Authority in Hariri's murder case. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, refused to comment on the Melis report or findings. In meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, Annan said that it is premature and unwise to comment on Melis's visit to Damascus. Moreover, Annan denied that the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad had brokered a deal with the International Committee, adding that Syria so far has not been accused or indicted for the killing of Hariri. Moreover, U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice denied that any deal has been made between Washington and Damascus regarding Hariri's case.
المعلومات التي تحدثت عن صفقة بين الولايات المتحدة وسوريا حول هذا الموضوع.
وننهي مدار اليوم مع مطعم الوجبات الخفيفة على الطريقة الأمريكية.
Today, our topic evolves around a new fast food restaurant that opened in Paris. It serves halal or kosher meals in accordance with Islamic laws. The beverage, Mecca Cola, became very popular in grocery stores of Muslim neighborhoods in France. Meanwhile, a new fast food restaurant opened for business in Paris. Its interior and exterior decors, its way of conducting business, and the way the meals are prepared are similar to those of Western franchises. It also serves soda pop and beverages as other fast food restaurants. However, the restaurant serves meals that contain kosher meat in accordance with Islamic law.
We serve food and drinks that are kosher. People do not need to inquire about the ingredients of the food we serve or whether it is kosher or not. Everything we provide conforms to Islamic laws. We have a committee that oversees and monitors our business operation. We implement full transparency to our customers.
وفيما قانون العلمانية يمنع الحجاب في المؤسسات العمومية من يسهرن على خدمة الزبائن هنا بإمكانهن الاحتفاظ.
Even though French laws prevent women from wearing veils in public corporations, Muslim women get to cover up while working in this restaurant. The restaurant is also employing some Moroccan men who had been suffering for many years of unemployment due to work discrimination. The restaurant gets very busy during nighttime and during the holidays. Some people order their food to go, while others prefer to dine in as their children play in the restaurant play area that is similar to that of McDonald's. The grown-ups also like the decor and the hospitality of the restaurant.
كنا يعني من قبل ما عندناش اختيار كثير كنا نروحوا للماكدونالد يعني الاختيار الوحيد اللي كان عندنا هو ساندويتش يعني السمك.
Before the opening of this restaurant, we did not have much choice. We used to go to McDonald's and order only fish sandwiches. Thank God this restaurant is now open and many people are happy for it. They come from all over the place to dine in here. We have now lots of choices. The meals are prepared with kosher meat.
اللحم بصراحة وولادنا ثاني إن شاء الله يأكلوا لحم حلال.
حاجة حلال نأكلوا لولدنا لحم حلال واللي ما صرنا لازم في ماكدو.
We can eat kosher meat, thank God. We are happy for our Muslim brothers. God willing, more restaurants like this will open in other parts of Europe.
The restaurant welcomes all people. However, the majority of patrons so far have been Muslim. Some caution that the restaurant may contribute to a widening of the isolation of Muslims, such fears being rejected by the restaurant's owners.
We are not for the exclusion of Muslims from the melting pot. Our restaurant is open for everyone.
The restaurant or its owners have not been subjected to harassment or criticism thus far. However, some ultra-right opposing groups started to criticize it, describing it as a model for the practice of what they call a silent al-jihad al-Islami in France.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities. And the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.